Hey there, everybody. Randy Dalton coming to you from R&B Properties. This is something I'm hoping to be able to start doing every week, looking at grabbing a little piece of information, a little something that's happening in the world out there with regards to property management, and just putting it out there. So if you're interested in this type of information, hit the subscribe button and check out our video every week. All right. This week, I wanted to talk a little bit about Bill 184. A few people have heard about this. A lot of people have been talking about it in terms of the Ontario government. It passed royal assent, has not been proclaimed into law just yet, but we're hopeful that that's going to happen very soon. Few issues with regards to Bill 184, so I just want to cover them off really quickly. Number one, this is not so good news for the landlord. Eviction for renovations, for demolition, for conversion of a unit to a commercial unit, as an example. In the past, 5 units and up, you would have to compensate the tenant. Going forward, any and all landlords are going to have to compensate the tenant. So I believe the expectation is for 1 to 4 units that you compensate the tenant 1 month's rent. Make sure that you do that as part of the process. All right. Another issue, shouldn't be an issue for landlords, but hopefully it's not an issue for you. Bad faith. I've been saying it over and over and over again. Go in with clean hands. Go to the tribunal. Be straight up. Understand the law. Follow the law. Be straight up. Be fully transparent. Tell people basically, your side of the story, but fully truthful. Bad faith penalties going forward. If a landlord is found to be working in bad faith, the tenant is able to file a claim against the landlord. The landlord-tenant board can issue a penalty up to 12 months rent. You will have to pay up to 1 year in rent to the tenant. That's in addition to fines that have now gone from $25,000 to $50,000 or $100,000 to $250,000 for a corporation. So again, guys, if you haven't got it already, get it now. Do not operate in bad faith. Fully transparent, fully honest. Go in with clean hands. Good news for landlords, raising of maintenance concerns always drove me crazy. You go into a hearing about rent, the tenant has every right to bring up maintenance concerns. And if you're not able to respond to those concerns right away, you could either require an adjournment or end up with just losing your file, losing your ability to evict the tenant. It's never been very good, never been very fair. So this is great news for landlords. Going forward, if tenants are going to raise any issue that could be on a tenant application, maintenance being the main one, but if they're going to raise any issues, they must notify the landlord in advance and in writing. So this is really important, really valuable for us, because now if the tenant is expected to bring up these concerns, at least we know what the concerns are, and you can go in prepared and ready to explain your side of the situation and hopefully not lose your eviction because of it. One thing for landlords, hope you guys have been doing it. If you are filing N4L1, if you're filing an N4L1 on or after March 17th, 2020, so basically the COVID-19 era, you have now got to be able to prove that you negotiated, tried to negotiate a settlement, a payment plan, an agreement with your tenant to pay back rent in whatever capacity they're able to pay. You have to be able to prove that. If you're not able to prove it, it's going to be really tough on you in terms of being able to evict a tenant without that proof. One other thing is, this is great news for landlords. Jurisdiction of the LTB has now changed. I never thought it was fair. Tenant leaves the property and a year later they can come after you for some reason, for some issue. But the landlord, as soon as the tenant leaves the property, That's it. You're done. It's no longer the LTB jurisdiction. You now have to go to small claims. Small claims is much more laborious. It's much more costly process. So great news with this Bill 184. You will now, as a landlord, you will now be able to go after your tenant up to 1 year after they've moved out. So imagine that, tenant says they're going to move out July 31st. You say, great, thanks. It's been nice. You go in on August 2nd, August 3rd, and you see all kinds of damages that the tenant has done to your unit. It might be nothing other than just as they were moving out, they dinged walls, they removed screws. We get this all the time. Drywall screws, spikes that they use to hang things. They remove that, and now you've got, basically holes everywhere. Now you've got the ability to go after that tenant, both in terms of damages, but also in terms of rents owed. So if they haven't paid all their final rents before they move out, you can go after them up to 1 year later. Still going to have a little bit of a problem. You got to find them. You got to be able to serve them. Um, and you got to be able to prove that you serve them. But if you're able to do that, you are going to be able to go after them up to 1 year later. The final thing, ex parte. Lots of talk about this. Ex parte is basically getting an order without a hearing. This has happened in the past with respect to if you've got a payment plan that's been part of a mediated settlement at the tribunal, and the tenant doesn't honor the payment plan, you request what's called a Section 78, and basically you can evict without a hearing, evict without notice to the tenant. A little bit of expanded abilities now with the ex parte order and Bill 184. It's going to be a little unclear. It's going to be a little bit confusing. I strongly recommend that you work with a property management company or a paralegal to help you through the process until things kind of get proceduralized within the landlord-tenant board. Of course, the government has written their laws, but the laws are very vague. And we fully expect that the landlord-tenant board and the powers that be there are going to be able to create policies and procedures, maybe even forms that you have to use. Until then, it is possible, but I strongly recommend using property management company or paralegal. Few things that you really need to cover. Number one, you got to make sure it's in the document that's signed by both parties. Make sure that it's in there that nobody's been coerced into this. Make sure that you explain to the tenant and make sure it's in writing. $1 short, 1 day late, you can file for an eviction without further notice to the tenant. Even best if you can get them to sign beside each and every one of those items. And then the third item is to make sure that you specify the amount. Sorry, I was trying to read my writing. Make sure that you specify the amount that's owed. Make sure that you specify that the parties agree that the rent is owed in the amount of up until the end of the next rental period. Make sure you specify a date. So if they pay the beginning of every month and you deal with this payment plan, let's say in the month of July, and that the tenant owes $1,000, make sure that you specify in the payment plan that the parties understand and agree that the rents owed are $1,000 up to and including July 31st, 2020. Make sure that that piece of information is in there as well. So those three pieces will certainly help you. I think that's it for now. Thanks for listening to this, and hopefully we'll see a few subscribers on this channel, and we will continue to do this on a weekly basis. All right, thanks again. See you soon.